At 70 years old, Kevin Costner finally decided to reveal something he had kept close to his heart for decades, something about one of Hollywood's most iconic figures, Robert Redford. Fans have long speculated about the truth behind their relationship. Were they rivals? Were they collaborators who never got their moment? Or was there something deeper, something more personal that influenced the very fabric of Costner's career? Costner never rushed to answer those questions. He preferred silence over spectacle. But now, as he steps into the later chapters of his extraordinary life, he's ready to share the truth, one shaped by mentorship, admiration, and a bond that quietly changed the direction of his destiny. Before that truth came into focus, though, Costner's journey began far from the world of red carpets and Oscar stages. Kevin Michael Costner was born on January 18, 1955, in Linwood, California, and raised in a blue-collar family grounded in simplicity, humility, and hard work. His father, William, worked as an electrician and later a utility executive, while his mother, Sharon, was a welfare worker who instilled compassion and community-minded values in her children. The Costners moved frequently because of William's job, and those constant relocations shaped Kevin in quiet but powerful ways. He learned resilience early, not the glamorous kind tied to Hollywood legends, but the practical resilience of a boy who had to make new friends, adjust to new surroundings, and grow comfortable with uncertainty. He learned how to be adaptable, independent, and observant. These traits would later define not only the characters he played, but the man he became. As a child, Costner loved stories, books, movies, music, anything that carried him into another world. Yet, the idea of becoming an actor wasn't even on his radar. He saw the world through practical lenses. He went to California State University, Fullerton, intending to study marketing and finance. Acting was something other people did, something that seemed unrealistic for someone who had never once stepped onto a stage. That all changed on a single day, on a single flight, with a single conversation. One afternoon during his final year of college, Costner found himself sitting on a plane next to legendary actor Richard Burton. Burton, already a towering figure in film history, spoke openly and passionately about the craft, the calling, the sacrifice, and the beauty of a life lived in storytelling. Costner listened, not as a fan, but as a young man hearing, for the first time, that a dream could become a path if one dared to follow it. Burton didn't give Costner a job or a shortcut. What he offered was far more important. Permission to try, permission to believe. That moment lit a fire in Costner that would burn for decades. He began taking acting classes immediately. He worked odd jobs, performed in tiny theaters, slept little, and hoped much. He had no connections, no insider advantages, and no guarantees. But he had determination, and that was enough. His rise wasn't quick. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't destined. It was earned. In the early 1980s, Costner scraped together minor roles, each one a stepping stone. His break almost came with The Big Chill, 1983, when director Lawrence Kasdan cast him as Alex. But in a twist of Hollywood irony, Costner's scenes were entirely cut. For some actors, that would have been the end. For Kasdan, however, it was the beginning. He saw something in Costner, quiet assurance, natural charisma, emotional depth, and he didn't forget it. 2 years later, Kasdan cast him in Silverado 1985. This time, nothing was cut. Costner exploded onto the scene. Suddenly, he wasn't just another aspiring actor. He was memorable. He was unique. He was a face audiences couldn't forget. His run in the late 1980s proved that the rise wasn't a fluke. The Untouchables, 1987, showcased his strength and integrity. Bull Durham, 1988, made him a romantic lead. Field of Dreams, 1989, made him an icon, a symbol of sincerity, hope, and the American spirit. These roles weren't accidents. They were reflections of who he was and the values he carried from childhood: loyalty, authenticity, and emotional clarity. But nothing, and no one, could have predicted what came next. In 1990, Costner stepped behind the camera to direct Dances with Wolves. The studios doubted him. The budget ballooned. Critics whispered that it would end his career. They said it was too long, too quiet, too ambitious, even career suicide. But Costner believed in the story. The film became a cultural phenomenon and earned 7 Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Picture. Suddenly, the young man from Linwood had become one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. His storytelling was empathetic, visual, and deeply human. And though few knew it then, one of the men who inspired him most to take that leap into directing was Robert Redford. Costner's 1990s remained packed with hits: Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, JFK, The Bodyguard, Wyatt Earp. Each role expanded his range and deepened his stardom. The Bodyguard, in particular, became a global sensation. His chemistry with Whitney Houston made the film unforgettable, and the soundtrack success cemented its place in pop culture forever. But Costner wasn't invincible. Waterworld 1995 and The Postman 1997 became infamous for their budgets, production issues, and cold receptions. Yet, even in failure, many admired Costner's fearlessness. He was never afraid to take risks. He followed his instincts, sometimes into triumph, sometimes into trouble. Still, he persisted. He explored music with his band Modern West. He raised 7 children whom he often described as the true center of his life. And though he remained a Hollywood fixture, he preferred a quieter world, ranching, songwriting, fatherhood, and wide-open spaces. Then, much later in life, he found a role that reintroduced him to a new generation. In 2018, Costner took on the role of John Dutton in Yellowstone. The tough, wounded, morally complex patriarch became an instant hit with audiences around the world. Costner's performance was raw and commanding, blending decades of experience with the emotional weight of a man who had lived deeply. Fans saw in John Dutton the same depth they saw in Costner himself, a man shaped by hardship, loyalty, and love for the land. His success on Yellowstone reminded the world why Kevin Costner's name still carries weight, because he brings humanity, gravity, and truth to every role. But even as he entered this remarkable resurgence, his personal life experienced another upheaval. Costner's love life has always been as compelling as the characters he portrayed. Marriage to Cindy Silva. He married his college sweetheart, Cindy Silva, in 1978. She supported him through the lean years and the pressure of sudden fame. Together, they raised 3 children and built a life that looked stable from the outside. But fame demands much and gives little back. Between long shoots and growing public scrutiny, their relationship strained. In 1994, they divorced in one of Hollywood's most expensive settlements at the time. Costner later admitted that the breakup forced him to confront who he was and what he valued. He carried those lessons with him, even as his career marched forward. Marriage to Christine Baumgartner. Years later, Costner found love again with Christine Baumgartner, a model and handbag designer nearly 2 decades younger. After reconciling from an early breakup, they married in a breathtaking ceremony at Costner's Colorado ranch in 2004. They welcomed 3 more children, and Costner often spoke of Christine as someone who brought calm and joy into his life. Their marriage lasted 20 years, until 2024, when they too announced a divorce that shocked fans. Despite the sadness, Costner emphasized one thing: his children remained his priority. This is where the story turns toward what Costner finally revealed at 70. For decades, people wondered about the relationship between Kevin Costner and Robert Redford. They were often mentioned together, 2 American screen icons with shared sensibilities, shared love for the West, shared passion for authenticity. But Costner rarely spoke openly about Redford's influence. Until now, in a rare, emotional interview, Costner said, "Robert wasn't just someone I admired. He shaped me in ways I didn't understand at the time. The risks he took, the integrity he had, it gave me a kind of roadmap." Redford's presence in the film world was different, quiet, thoughtful, steady. He didn't chase the spotlight. He didn't bend to trends. He carved his own path and made films that mattered to him, whether Hollywood approved or not. That independence resonated deeply with Costner. Costner said that Redford's choice to direct ordinary people was a revelation. "When Robert stepped behind the camera, it made me realize I could do that too." I could tell the stories I believed in. This moment planted the seed that eventually grew into Dances with Wolves. Few knew that in the early 1990s, Redford approached Costner about starring in A River Runs Through It. The role eventually went to Brad Pitt, but Costner remembered those conversations vividly. Robert told me that the story wasn't just about fly fishing. It was about fathers and sons, about the words we never say. That stayed with me. It touched something personal. Costner noted that their bond was never built on Hollywood parties or pose photographs. Instead, it grew from the quiet talks about land, nature, storytelling, and craft. We talked about the West more than we talked about movies, Costner said. We both saw it as something alive, something that shapes you. Redford's founding of Sundance deeply impressed Costner. It was a commitment to new voices, independent spirit, and artistic integrity. Robert never sold out, Costner stated plainly. That kind of integrity is rare. Redford gave Costner the courage to trust his instincts, especially when the world doubted him most. Even today, when Costner directs, he still hears Redford's voice. Calm, quiet, reminding me to slow down to find the truth. The truth, at 70, Costner finally admitted, is that Robert Redford wasn't a rival. He wasn't just an influence or a colleague. He was a teacher. He was a lighthouse. He was a friend. And he shaped Kevin Costner in ways most people never saw. As Costner reflected on his life and career, he summed up his feelings about Redford with a simplicity that only deep respect can produce. If I've ever made a film that touched someone that made them feel something real, it's because men like Robert Redford showed me how it's done. For Kevin Costner, the truth is not dramatic or scandalous. It is something much more profound. Redford helped shape the artist and the man he became. At 70, Costner's words are less a revelation and more a tribute, a recognition of a friendship built not on public performance but on private wisdom, one that endured through decades, fame, failures, and triumphs. In the end, it wasn't Hollywood that defined Costner. It was integrity, loyalty, courage, and the men who showed him what those things looked like. And among them, Robert Redford stands tallest.